The RWI B21 robot top, called the Enclosure, houses the computers, some sensors, more electronics. It's roughly 21 inches in diameter. "22 inches to the main top level. "29 inches to the button layer, and on this one it has a camera layer, but the top of the cameras is roughly 41 inches. Combine that with the B21 base, which is 16 inches, and you're up to 57 inches tall. 57 inches. The upper enclosure weighs around 63 pounds. Add in as configured. As in the panels, some other pieces, and we're up to roughly 90 pounds. The base plus batteries is at 212 pounds. Put them both together and you have a 300-pound robot. It's aluminum construction. It has 6 outer panels, 2 computer bays, 1 arm bay, but this one doesn't have an arm. The B21 upper enclosure, separated from the base, no panels. The enclosure top sits on the robot base. All the power for the upper enclosure and the LiDAR unit and the wireless bridge fed into this with a 24-pin pair or conductor, 24 conductor, 26 gauge ribbon cable. Looked into it, it's got 8 pins, 8 conductors for positive, 8 for negative, leaves 8 left over for serial communication, be it RS-232, 422, 485. I suspect for the communication between the two they're using 485 because it's serially addressable. So let's look at our 8 26 gauge wires. It's 41 ohms per 100 feet. And if you check the charts, it can carry continuously 0.36 amps. So to compute the power carrying capacity of these 26 gauge wires, we're going to consider them like resistors. 8 resistors in parallel. The resistive equivalence for that is 1 over R1 plus 1 over R2 plus 1 over R3 to 1 over R8. Do the math, it works out to 5.125 ohms. Check the chart. That's a 17 gauge wire. 2 amps continuous is called 3 amps. 19 amps maximum, and then it's heating up and starting to melt. So power equals voltage times amps. 48 volts times 3, 144 watts. Let's say you are in a cool room, careful, don't spike it. 10 amps, let's say, 480 watts. Has to power everything. 2 computers, cameras, serial, LiDAR, wireless, and an arm if you got it. .26 gauge, 10 gauge. This would have been nice. B21, of course, is made of two parts, the lower base and the upper enclosure. When you mate the two, you need to connect some wires, and its placement on the base straddles the LiDAR unit. So it's possible to pinch some wires in here. So we're going to lift this up. Remember, it could weigh between 60 and 90 pounds. Carefully place it on the base and connect her up. So it's sitting on the handles. Hopefully we don't pinch any wires. Handle or the latches sometimes get caught with the top enclosure sitting on the base with these latches latched. This is now one unit. We have some electronics, serial multiplexer. Behind some of these panels, there's some more electronics or wire runs. This one's got a DC converter and a power board of some kind and a few wires. The arm bay, some of these had arm option to swing out. Not sure how they managed the power. We have the ribbon cable that connects the base to the upper enclosure. 8 pins for plus, 8 pins for minus, and there's some serial communication and maybe some signals. This goes to the wireless network. Radio 10/2 coax. It gets tucked under here. Video generator, it's kind of a signal matching computer bay. Serial multiplexer for the panels. Other end of the arm bay. Another serial multiplexer. Then we're at the next level up. The B21 robot has 2 computers, 2 computer bays, along with some miscellaneous electronics, separated by the robot arm bay. Computers are roughly Pentium MMX, and they had 10 to 20 megaflops. By contrast, modern cell phone, 900 gigaflops, multi-core, single core, 8 megs of RAM, 8 gigs of RAM. GPS, USB, Bluetooth, Wi-Fi, serial ports, coax network. A lot of gold here. The Intel processor sat about here, or sits about here. It has miscellaneous cards like combination serial ports with multiple ports, frame grabbers, audio cards, hard drive, high density floppy, no USB, just plain old serial communication. Computer bays depending on the model and configuration, are set up to do different functions. You might have one computer base set up for video, with maybe 2 frame grabbers, network card, hard drive, high density floppy, has a speaker in there, but mainly the computers do computing, serial communication, and some frame grabbing. There's no built-in USB. Networking is an add-on card. Computer bays on the B21 robot, protected by a nice cover, cooling fan, computing. The B21 upper enclosure has 6 panels, somewhat unique in orientation, left hand, right hand side. Base, not so much. They're all kind of interchangeable. But the upper ones, because of the robot arm option, have unique panels. It's the robot arm panel. It has the pivot, but the latching pin is inboard versus being out here like the rest of the doors. Aluminum panel, 4 Polaroid 600 type series sonar sensors with associated electronics hooked up in the daisy chain serial. Similar for the 4 IR sensors, also hooked up in 4 daisy chained, all leading up to 1 ribbon cable. It also has 4 springy switch things, and these might even be bump sensors, but I don't know, if they're bump sensors, it's pretty poor implementation, and I'm not sure how good they're going to be. If this was a strain gauge, I'd be impressed. But no, it's just a springy piece of metal with a wire on it. So, to install the panel, these sit on the pins versus these being held up by a screw. Push against the spring. There's the panel. It's got two cables on this one. The long one goes for the next panel. Short one gets plugged in there. Bottom panel is more springy because there's a notch. I think that might be for the arm or something. But latched, not latched. Latched. So, on the right side of the robot, we have the arm door panel on. The next panel, I was showing on the arm one, the pivot pin is in the same spot, but the latch pin, instead of being here, is outboard more. Same thing, they all have 4 Polaroid type sensors, 4 IR sensors. Left side, right side. Push in the springy thing, push against the spring to get it to latch. Hook up the serial cable, lift it a little bit, push against the springs, and we're latched. Switches are also hiding behind the panel. Similar story. Cable is always going to be on the pivot end. Much easier than the base. Hook up the cable. Without bending any pins. Half the panel's on. I'll put the rest of the panels on off camera. Now we have all the panels on. The arm door panels, serial connections, room for the robot arm, the upper enclosure, the panels on and latched. So now we're going to talk about the top layer, the B21 robot. On the upper enclosure, it's the main floor, if you want to call it that. Top of the control floor, which has bolt holes for accessories like this bar, which they mounted a third layer with some pan and tilt serial controllers with 2 cameras. Here we have a plain old analog speaker. Here we have a magnetic flux compass engine. They didn't have GPS, they didn't have INS. Helps with their dead reckoning. Support structure. Has 2 computers, serial port, reset. Kind of an activate button. Power for a laptop if you have a laptop setting here. 2 emergency switches, which the e-stops don't latch, so we have some LEDs, power, hard drive, AB, kill, auxiliary number 1, auxiliary number 2, sensors, gripper if you got the arm option, cameras, and the wireless. 10 base T, 10 base 2, where you have to pull the terminator, hook up your network, coax, then you can communicate with the network. Don't take your network down, requires the terminator. Network's back up. Local network is back up. We also have some push buttons. These are programmatically user assigned, so you could have one like arm extend, gripper, grip, arm retract, gripper open. We have the antenna for the wireless Ethernet bridge, not Wi-Fi, but something like it. And on the pan and tilt camera things, they're serial controlled with a manual option, so you can rotate your camera to look at other things. It's got 2 on this one. And you can look up if you're navigating by ceiling tiles or high-vac ductwork. And you can look down if you got the robot arm, see if it's grabbing something. So there is functionality in having these serial pan and tilt controllers. 2 pan and tilt, 2 cameras. This particular one's got the black and white, and this is only about 786 by 494 pixels across. But this is the B21 upper enclosure area, wireless.